welcome everyone to today's fun edition of Don't Stop Me Now. And we are interviewing and talking to leaders across the country, people who are CEOs, founders, sales leaders, business leaders, all to find out what's happening with business today, whether it's from emerging leaders or it's, how are we handling the remote and the hybrid situation or bringing people back in the office? We also talk a little bit sometimes about emotional intelligence and how that drives business. But today I have a wonderful guest, my dear friend, Laurie Swanson, who is the CEO and founder of Inspire Her Tech, HER, and she's going to tell us a little bit about that. But what it is she is driving a space for women in technology. So welcome, Laurie.
Welcome. So glad to be here, Paula. Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you. I put your LinkedIn profile down at the bottom for when people ask, how do I get a hold of her? Because she's amazing.
I see that. That's great.
So tell me a little bit about your business.
So let's see. So where to start? So yeah. I'll tell you a little about myself, which leads into my business. So perfect. After graduating college, I had a degree in business with an emphasis on information technology. And I started my career as a computer programmer. So I was a technologist out of the gate, but pretty quickly realized that that was not the path for me. And at the time, I wasn't clear if it was just I didn't love coding, or in hindsight, the culture was probably not, the best culture for me. I was the only woman programmer in a sea of guys, and it was what you hear about that sort of environment. So, but as I always say, the universe doesn't leave you stranded. It takes you where you need to be. And that brought me into using recruiters to help me find a more sales and technology blended role, which ended up actually being recruiting. So I went into recruiting. I found I loved it. I loved talking with businesses about building their teams. I loved talking with companies and learning the different industries. So that was sort of my business major from the University of Texas that I got to feed that, but also being able to talk to individuals about their career path, about where they were, where they wanted to go, and I could be a part of that transition, which really hits to the heart of who I am, and which is to be of service to people. So I was recruiting, working for a firm. I decided that I was going to try my hand at software sales because I had been, that was my first really, recruiting was my first foray into sales.
Right.
But I thought I should try a product, And so I did. I sold software. I was the number one rep for my firm. I was good at it. But again, I was out of alignment with what I call my true nature. Yep. And so in that process, I found my way back into recruiting and started my own firm. Mm-hmm. And so I have had my own firm now for 25 years, have teams as small as 3 up to 12. I've been in downtown Chicago. I'm now in the suburbs of Chicago. Yep. And then, as you mentioned, we did a rebrand in 2018 and became Inspire Tech.
Right.
And added another line of business, which is career coaching for corporate women in technology or technology adjacent careers. Mm-hmm. And we really focus on job search strategy, corporate, how to navigate within corporate environment as a woman and without giving away too much of yourself or folding too much over to try to fit in. Yep. And then really aligning the work you're doing with your true essential self. so that you have more joy, more peace, more fun, and a full, you know,
A full
harmonized life. Yeah.
Right. As you know, in my book, I think we've talked about, is the only way to show up is that you're for your true self, to bring your whole self. And because, like you said, if you're not in alignment, that balance can really throw you off key. And it doesn't do it instantaneously.
No.
It takes time to throw you off key until you're like, what? Where did the time go? What am I doing?
Right. Right. Yeah. Sometimes you just keep plugging away, and then you're like, how did I get here? And how come it didn't give me what I had hoped, or thought it might? Or you might find yourself in a career you're super passionate about, love, 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 until you don't.
Exactly.
And then what? And then all of a sudden, like you said, some time can go by before you recognize that, hey, I thought I should keep loving this for the rest of my life, but that isn't necessarily the case. So now what? And even on my website, if your audience goes out to my website, we have a 2-minute quiz called What Stage is Your Career in? And it talks about, are you, in a career disruption where, by choice or circumstance, it's time for a change? Or are you in sort of career contemplation where you're thinking about a change, but not quite sure, what will I do? How will I do it? Or you could be in career discovery, which is much more active and you're actively pursuing something new for yourself. Or perhaps you are landed in career love.
Yeah.
The final stage but there's so much, no matter which stage you're in, there are many opportunities to both do and be within those different stages that can make a huge difference into what you're talking about, which is this alignment, this harmony, this balance, so that almost every moment of every day you're really excited about it.
I love that. I'm trying to put your website up here. So I know it's right there with inspirehertech.com, but I want to make sure it's going across the
feed.
That's
so cool.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Are you finding people who are wanting to be or are aspiring leaders, but just don't know how to get there?
For sure.
What are you helping them or guiding them on? What are some of the tips
I think
great?
Again, I think that I see that I work with women who are at the beginning of their career, mid-career, or even at the tail end of their career. And each of those have somewhat different priorities, somewhat different desires. I sometimes hear women at mid to further along and wonder if they've lost their ambition. And that isn't necessarily what's happening. Just things are shifting for you. Yeah. But at the beginning of the career, you're like, oh, I might be super ambitious and super, excited about climbing the ladder and building my career. And that can change over time, which is actually really cool as you move into more wisdom. But yes, how do you advance your career is something that we work on a lot. How do you become more seen in your organization, more visible? What can you do? And there's different strategies you can do to become more visible in your organization. How do you really, what is it that you want?
Yeah, I think that's the key.
That's the key. You start sort of with your core values, and then, you might create a mission statement. And then out of that, surfaces those things that are really important to you. And then you can make decisions about what industry you're in, what size organization you're in, what your role is. And then as you start to understand more about where you want to be and where you want to go, then you can put some practical steps in place to get you there, and so, yeah.
I love that because, I'm on career 2.0 and 58 going on 59. But, it's been the most beautiful adventure. that I'm on, and completely different than what I've done. And
Yes,
so,
and isn't that so fun?
yeah,
So fun. I mean, you can take a whole bunch of things throughout your life
yeah,
from very young to, throughout your career life, and
mhm,
then you get a real chance to bring it all together and say none of this, no more of that, but more of this,
this,
again more of this, and how can I make that into something that pays me good money
right?
enough to have the life that I yearn for.
The life that I love. I'm living my best life right now.
Yay.
And it's interesting because I never thought I would give up what I had because I built it. But I found that I'm a builder, right?
Yes.
So once the opportunity came where the building wasn't quite as quick as it was, it's like, what do I do now?
Well, now, so I'll ask you, I'll turn the tables. So how did you know you'd reach that point, Paula?
It's interesting. I think I knew probably a couple years before the decision was made. And honestly, the decision was made for me.
Right.
And that's, if I had known what I know now, it would have been different.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, and I think that happens to a lot, like I said, that career disruption, that choice or circumstance,
yep,
so for you, you may have chosen a couple years earlier if you'd been aware of
there,
some of those things that were no longer bringing you joy. And
right.
if you're, but again, we kind of get into, robotic mode, and we do the things, and especially as we get further on in our career and we start thinking, gosh, just 5 more years and then that's it. I
I
need to
know.
get through 5 more years, right? But young in your career too, that happens a lot where no longer fulfilled by what they thought was going to fulfill them, or perhaps the career they chose was a career chosen by cultural expectations and not necessarily their
Yeah.
own true nature expectations, for themselves.
That is so true.
Mhm.
And I knew that, my job was going to be eliminated.
Right.
No, but I thought I had another couple, 3 years or so. So came quicker than I had planned or assumed.
Yep.
Uh, but here's the thing is I think people also find one thing about emerging leaders and aspiring leaders that I like to talk about is I think that they don't realize that once you start climbing the corporate ladder and you get to a certain level, it really becomes a group think and not
Yeah.
necessarily an individual hear me, this is what I can do creatively and inspiringly. You're almost in this group think.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
So, every culture is a little bit different.
hmm
And, again, you'll find maybe the smaller, scrappier firms probably could use a little more groupthink,
yeah,
and as you go up into larger corporations, they could use a little bit more of that, entrepreneurial
spirit.
individuality spirit to drive some innovation and to create some different energies.
I think you're so right. And I think it's not a company or a culture, it's where they are. Are they new? Are they, going from medium to enterprise? I think it's not necessarily the culture, but it's the strategy to grow at some point,
Right.
right? So, women in tech.
Yeah.
Are you finding a lot more women getting into tech? And so you and I both know that before there was not a lot of women in sales, there's not a lot of women in tech, and there was building that. Do you see a turn coming that people are actually looking to hire women in tech more often?
Well, I think that, yes, over, the last few years, you hear a lot about inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And belonging, which are different things. But So I think in the beginning, they spent a lot of time with the idea of diversity. So we were going to hire, different races and different sexes and different maybe sexual orientation if they were a little more progressive, and ages and all of those things. But there was a real missing piece of inclusion where you can have all these numbers, but how do you make those numbers count? How do you bring meaning to those numbers so that someone feels like they belong, feels like they're included? And I think that's been the shift that's coming. And I think as that it's in the beginning stages still, especially in your mid to larger organizations that tend to follow some of the old school rules or ways of doing things because they think that that's the way to do it. And so, but they're very much aware. You can't, the data doesn't lie, right? We know that having diverse teams, having more women on your team is going to create greater profit. It's going to create greater engagement, less turnover. And one of the ones that I think is really interesting is, especially if you're in manufacturing or something like that, but if you have more women within those areas of your organization, you'll have greater safety records, better safety records, right? So these things, again, the executive team, you can't lie with the data, yet how do you bring that change about? What does that mean to be an inclusive culture, that one that is attractive to women in STEM careers? I particularly focus on technology, but any of those, they even say STEAM careers, right? Science and engineering and the technical arts, the A in STEAM, and then math. Because we all know that women have the aptitude for all of those things, but the culture didn't really support them. And again, the thinking didn't really support them pursuing those careers. So long answer kind of to your question, but when I graduated from University of Texas with a degree in information technology, I'm literally a stat. I was at the top of the arc of the number of women graduating with a tech degree, and then it dropped, and there's lots of data around why that happened.
Wow.
But I think I'm hoping that it's stabilizing and starting to pop back up again from the lowest percentage, which was around 17 to 19, depending on, like when I graduated, the percent of women with technology degrees was 34 to 36, again, depending on where you read the data. And now in the last couple of years, it's been 17 to 19%. So really dropping. But with diversity, equity, inclusion becoming, and this idea of being, conscious capitalism and really people wanting to align behind a bigger mission and to align their core values with the core values of an organization, and not being willing to put up with, leadership that isn't reflective of them in all different ways. I think that this will continue to bring more and more women back into the technology fields because it's fun there,
and back into the sales field.
Right. Well, that's where the money is. I mean, I keep saying, if you want to be a woman of really great financial means, technology and sales
and put it together, tech sales.
Just like I did, recruiting, software sales, but I would say I wasn't a technologist, even though I call myself a woman in tech, but not a heads down coder, but still able to take advantage of that market through what I am good at, which is relating to people and connecting, and lots of women are. And then also very strong, field that's growing is that like UX, UI, web design, user interface, user experience, which is a technical field, but it definitely requires this feminine, sort of ability to intuit and to create. And again, I say feminine ability, and I'm not saying that's only women have it. We know that we have
Right.
a blend of masculine and feminine traits. It's just that the masculine traits have been the ones that have been honored and taught and acknowledged, and those other ones have fallen a bit to the wayside. And if I'm in my La La Land bubble, please do not burst it.
Yeah.
I believe it's that we are recognizing that we have to balance those things within corporate America in order to save the world.
And you know what? I think you're right. And I think when you talk about feminine and masculine traits, it's not women and men.
Mm-mm.
It's actually the traits like passionate, kindness, courage, trustworthy, that are both feminine and masculine,
Yep.
both men and women. And, I love that you're talking about that because it is inclusive.
It is inclusive. And we're not just, again, back to the numbers. It's not just about the numbers. What does inclusivity and belonging really, really mean? It's honoring all of those other things that, again, in corporate America, I believe have, to our detriment, have been tamped down. Right. and not considered valuable or worthy of being able to bring a certain energy into a meeting. Come on, women are and that feminine energy it's amazing at that. We can read a room, we can feel where we need to tend to certain things. That's intuitive right. Feminine energy that can completely change the direction of a product, design meeting or a budget meeting or whatever.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And, with my side B characters, those are all the characters we put in there, and it's really important to you, for me, that people say, well, I don't always lead with the soft skills, but you know what? If you have those soft skills and those hard skills together, what an extraordinary leader you can be, right?
Yep. The best of the best, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing.
And you're going to attract all, like turnover, you're going to attract, you're going to retain when that culture, and it definitely is a top down, starts with the leader and the leadership team. When you start to really value and honor those types of qualities and give permission to someone to speak up when something feels off. I don't have to tell you what exactly it is, but I can tell you something's off on this right now. Yeah. Can we just explore it further? Can we get more curious around this? Can we, ask some more questions because something feels off?
And when you have that kind of open communication, it's extraordinary what opens up.
Right.
And the conversations, the ideas, everything. A friend of mine, and I used this when I was in a sales leadership position, taught me to flip the organization chart. So I was at the bottom of the organization chart, working for those who were my team.
Yeah.
And that's what it's really all about.
Yep.
That's where energy happens.
Yep.
Because it's amazing. Now you also hold monthly or quarterly.
Monthly, except for July and December, when I always say July is all about play and December is all about rest. Except I believe play and rest are the threads that should go through every minute of every day. But so I do the Unstoppable series, and you have been a guest, and so that what we do is we bring in men and women to talk about particular topics that my community has asked me for in coming up. You got to go to the website because we will be going. We've been testing out different. When we were in person, we used to do Saturday mornings because
Right.
Saturday mornings people could come. But then with COVID, we went remote, and then we had guests from India and Australia, and and I'm like, oh, we need to stay virtual. And so that we continue to do that. But then we played with, should it be an evening? Should we stay on Saturdays? But we have landed on Fridays. So in 2023, you will always find us, almost always, unless I can't get a particular guest on that day and I want that guest, I will change anything, right? But Fridays, 11:30 to 12:30 Central Time. And you go to the website, you register, it's free. But coming up in September, we have a really amazing talk on speaking as kind of a career game changer. So being able to, it's about presence and not only speaking at events, and helping to advance your career by being more visible that way, but also just making presentations to the executive team. So we'll talk about all of that. And then in October, I have Michelle Ashby, and she's going to talk about getting on a paid board seat. Because you'll hear, this is often what happens again with women, is people will say, well, start on a volunteer board, learn the ropes. But they don't say that to men. To men, it's kind of like, oh yeah, you want to go on that paid board? Go. You've never been on a board? It's okay. And we're like, no more of that.
Right.
Get yourself on a paid board seat, make some more money, again, and I can't wait till Michelle comes on because I have all kinds of questions. Because of course I have assumptions that you have to be like a certain place in your career. You have to, I don't know. So we'll find that all out in October. And then November, we have a woman who's been on talent acquisition internally, helping companies build their teams. And I, as an external recruiter for lots of my career, we're going to talk about what's the same, what's different, how do you work with both? And then I really want to talk about, some of those questions that how they like to hear you respond to, your career path and internally,
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Because internal is also so very important. Because
it is. So go to the events page at inspiretech.com and register for the Unstoppable for the upcoming ones. And then you'll be on the list, and then you'll get notices about, and sign up for my weekly blog too.
Yeah, that would be great. It was so fun having you. And I do love your Unstoppable program because
thank you.
About
Me too.
Active listening, and it was amazing. Just the people that were there, and everyone was so engaged.
Yep.
And I think that
we invite questions, and
that kind of community is so important nowadays.
I agree. And you can find yours if you go out to the events page and look through past Unstoppables. Yours will be there, so they can listen to that as well.
Thank you. So again, you've been amazing. We're right up at 2 minutes until we're done. Is there anything, one good tip that you want to give somebody that may be listening?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would say, and this is sort of, been part of what we've been talking about today, is I think ahead of this call a while ago, you had asked me about, how is music beneficial to leadership? Because you're, I love that about you. And I think that music is in that creative space. And I believe that the more you can tap into your creativity, your curiosity, at whatever point you're in your career, with relationship to not only where you want to go, but that person that's sitting across the desk from you. And so music, and how do you open up? Because again, women in tech or STEAM careers or corporate America, we are heavy on the thinking mind.
Yes.
Analytical, logical, step by step. So how do we move over to the creative mind? Music, art, play, be curious. That would be my tip.
All right. Well, that was not a plug. You did that on your own.
So I did it on my own.
So much. But yes, music helps you use both sides of the brain.
That's it.
And I love that you acknowledge that. And I'll see you on the next Unstoppable, I hope.
Me too.
And thank you again. You've been a pure joy. And when you see Michelle Kelly, tell her I said hello.
I sure will. I sure will. I talk to her tomorrow, so I'll make sure.
Good.
All right. Thanks, Paula. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a fun event. And I'm telling you, she is amazing. Go to her website, sign up for Unstoppable, check out what she's doing with her inspirehertech.com and all the women she's helping. We're off next week for Labor Day. So on the 12th, check back in and we'll see you then. Until next time, keep rocking your talent.